I want to bring in the former United States Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. He was also President Trump's national security advisor. As you know, Ambassador, Israel's ambassador is calling for the UN Security Council to immediately convene following these attacks. What's your assessment of what's going on right now?
Well, nothing's going to happen in the Security Council, that's for sure. I mean, what we had tonight was a massive failure of Israeli and American deterrence, massive failure, a 200 ballistic missile, cruise missile, drone failure. And I think, notwithstanding that there appears to be very little damage, fingers crossed until we get the final assessment. And thank God if the death toll is low or non-existent. And while we're at it, let's thank George W. Bush for getting out of the ABM Treaty of 1972, unleashing American missile defense capabilities. But once we see what the damage is, I think it's incumbent on Israel and the United States to reestablish deterrence in a major way. And I think that means, by definition, Israel's response, and there should be a response, should not be proportionate. It should be far stronger, because when deterrence fails, to reestablish it, you have to teach the adversary that any gain they may hope to get by any future attack will be more than outweighed by the damage that will be caused. So I hope President Biden isn't...
Well, I was just sorry for interrupting, but give us your assessment of an appropriate Israeli response to what Iran has now done.
Well, what Iran did tonight that I think was most significant was the firing of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles from its territory directly at Israel. Almost certainly at this point, none of those missiles contained a nuclear warhead. But you never can tell when the next firing, the next salvo of ballistic missiles might contain a nuclear warhead. So I think among the many targets Israel should consider, this is the opportunity to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program. And I hope President Biden is not trying to dissuade Prime Minister Netanyahu from doing that. And if he succeeds, and if at some future point the Ayatollahs are able to pull off what former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon called a nuclear holocaust, history will know who to blame.
So just to be precise, Ambassador Bolton, you're recommending that Israel launch an airstrike to try to destroy whatever nuclear capabilities the Iranians might have? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. I think they should go after the nuclear fuel cycle activities that are well known. Their locations are well known. And I think that would be the appropriate target, because right now Iran has demonstrated it is not restrained by any concern about a direct attack on Israeli territory from its attack. It has, by its own admission, fired ballistic and cruise missiles. And the only thing that has saved Israel is this amazing technology. Next time, if the attacks come from a different location containing nuclear warheads, Israel might not be so lucky. This is not time to play academic games and message and signal. This is a question of power. People say they're concerned about a wider war. The wider war began on October the 7th. That was not an Israeli war against Arabs or Palestinians or Gazans. It was Iran's attack on Israel using the Ring of Fire strategy. That's the strategic environment Israel faces right now. And the main cause, the puppeteer, the puppet master, is Iran. And if you take away their nuclear capability, that would be a dramatic hit to the regime, maybe enough to topple it.
Ambassador, my colleague Jim Sciutto is here with me in Washington. He has a question, he has a follow-up question for you. Go ahead, Jim.
Ambassador Bolton, given, and you know as well as we do, that Hezbollah and its enormous missile arsenal, many thousands of rockets and missiles, is intended in part by Iran to be a pressure point if Israel were to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. And I wonder, given the size of that, an order of magnitude bigger than it was, say, during the 2006 war, whether you believe Israel can today fight what would be a multi-front war, Gaza in the south, Hezbollah in the north, Iran to the east, and if you would then envision the U.S. directly involved in such a conflict.
Well, I think for the foreseeable future, Gaza is not going to be a principal battlefield, and it's certainly not something that's going to engage full Israeli military power. I think Hezbollah put pressure on Iran. It's one reason why the Iranian counterstrike took almost 2 weeks after the Damascus strike by Israel to say, you need to put skin in this game, Iran. So I'm not at all sure what Hezbollah's response would be to Israel taking out a nuclear power that hasn't done a thing for Hezbollah. The Israelis clearly have thought about what to do to neutralize Hezbollah. Perhaps their response, which also would be a pretty big problem for Iran, would be to go after Hezbollah now. My point is there are a number of steps Israel can take. Passivity at this point for Israel would be a big mistake. I mean, I think from the Israeli point of view, they should remember what Winston Churchill said in World War II, without victory, there is no survival.
How close is Iran to actually having a nuclear bomb?
Well, I think about 72 hours that they can get if they send a wire transfer to the central bank of North Korea in Pyongyang and give the North Koreans enough time to put a couple warheads on an airplane and fly them to Tehran. You know, there's a lot of talk about how close Iran is compared to how close they were 4 or 5 years ago or before the Trump administration pulled out of the nuclear deal, all of which assumes perfect knowledge of Iran's nuclear weapons program. I think we should have enough experience with faulty intelligence by now not to be so sure, not to know how much of Iran's uranium enrichment program is really being conducted under a mountain in North Korea. The fact is they're very close. The fact is the nuclear deal of 2015 was flawed from the start by allowing Iran any uranium enrichment capability whatever.